Describing shyness and its effects is different from describing social anxiety because shyness is not a diagnosis and there are no agreed criteria of shyness to use as starting points for a technical definition. Nevertheless, in some ways, shyness may be easier to understand than social anxiety or social phobia because it is so common, especially in adolescence and early adulthood. Most people have been through stages of shyness, often of an extremely painful nature, and know or can easily remember the fear and trepidation with which they approached all sorts of social situations when feeling shy. Shyness has recently been studied in more detail, mostly in America, and the findings from these studies provide much useful information about the nature of shyness and its effects. Some of the findings from this research are described here. Facts and figures about shyness. Statistics gathered by research teams have found that only about 5% of adults believe they have never been shy at all, and about 80% of people say that they have experienced periods of pronounced shyness during childhood and adolescence. It seems that about half the people who were shy when they were young grow out of the problem to a large degree, though a sizable proportion of them remain shy in some situations. About 40% of adults in America still describe themselves as shy, and in California there is some recent evidence that this number is slowly increasing. Shyness, it appears, is not dying away, but on the contrary, is posing more people problems than it used to. Although the reasons for this increase are not properly understood yet, there have been some interesting speculation about the factors in modern life that could contribute to such a change. For example, it has been suggested that people get less practice nowadays at certain kinds of social interactions than they used to. Many activities that once depended on direct communication with someone else, such as withdrawing money from a bank, filling the car up with petrol, and making a complicated telephone call, can now be carried out successfully without interacting directly with anyone else. Buying groceries usually involves consulting a mental or real list while filling up a trolley, rather than asking someone to find the things on the list for you and creating an opportunity to carry on a conversation and develop a relationship with the person supplying the goods you need. At work, many people spend much of their day, whether they are carrying out complex business transactions or routine, shyness is the norm rather than the exception in early life, and that somewhere in the process of growing up, it normally lessens. It affects nearly everyone to some degree in early childhood, but continues to affect less than half the adult American population. So there are highly likely to be some things that can hasten this change, and others, like using electronic means of communication, that might delay it. And learning more about what shyness is and about its effects is likely to be helpful. Is shyness a form of social anxiety, or is it something different? A simple answer to this question is that there appear to be both similarities and differences between shyness and social anxiety, but the two types of social difficulty have not been studied equally long, and in some of the finer points have yet to be elucidated. So this is a question that you may have to answer for yourself by reading through this chapter and the previous one, and thinking about the precise form that your problem takes. Shyness has been said to run the whole gamut from mild social awkwardness to extreme forms of withdrawal and inhibition that are indistinguishable from social phobia. However, one of the main differences between people who are shy and people who are socially anxious appears to be that, at least for a proportion of people, shyness can be a passing phenomenon. It can last for a few months or years in childhood. It can re-emerge during adolescence, or it can continue in an intermittent way, so that, for example, it disappears once the warm-up phase in the relationship or interaction is over. Many people who are shy to start with experience little or no social anxiety once they have overcome their initial reticence. Symptoms of shyness. Shyness appears always to involve a sense of shrinking back from social encounters and of retreating into oneself. Perhaps for this reason, the main symptoms of shyness are closely similar to those of social anxiety described in the previous chapter. They include physical and psychological discomfort, inhibition, excessive self-focus, and being preoccupied with thoughts, feelings, and physical reactions. Subjectively, this may translate into a powerful sense of doing things wrong, as if everyone else knew what was required of them and knew how to decode the signals correctly. It can leave people feeling exposed, dreading the next moment full of nervous tension, unable to forget the thumping heartbeat and the hot red face. The predominant beliefs of shy people reflect this sense of vulnerability and of being judged by others to be inadequate and lovable because it is rooted in sensitivity to the perceived opinion of other people, develops later and is more likely to occur in those people for whom the wariness form of shyness is slow to recede. However, we do not as yet know whether most shy people suffer from both kinds of shyness, and nor do we know well enough about the normal causes